Happy July 2nd, everybody. This day probably has no significance to you whatsoever, but to me, it does. Because 11 years ago, on this day, at 10 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer. And today also marks 11 years since that time, since I've been cancer-free. So yeah, today means a lot to me. And yes, because I've never actually come out and said it, I am a cancer survivor. That was a very difficult time in my life, not gonna lie, but it really doesn't bother me to think about it or talk about it. It's part of who I am, and I'm proud of that. So because today marks 11 years since I have been diagnosed with cancer, and again, I'm a survivor. I'm not 11 years with cancer, I'm 11 years free of it, you know, because that sounds confusing a little bit to me. I thought it would be really nice and appropriate to celebrate this day by telling my story of being cancer-free, of being a cancer survivor, and what it was like for me going through that time in my life. If any of you are currently cancer patients, maybe this story, my story, can encourage you and help you out to keep your head up and stay strong, and to keep fighting for that wonderful day where you can be where I'm at and reflect back on when you were diagnosed with cancer and be like, yeah buddy, 11 years since. And to those of you who are cancer survivors and have been survivors for I don't know how long now, kudos to you. And yeah, maybe we can all share our stories and just share this moment together, you know? So for me, my story with cancer really starts at the end of my 4th grade year of elementary school. I was in the gym and me and some kids were just playing around, roughhousing, you know, just being kids, you know, just being goofballs and just having fun in the gym. At one point, me and one of the kids were roughhousing, playing around with each other, and something about the way that, you know, I grabbed a hold of him while we were like play fighting or something, it tore my back, and it triggered like this really rough pain, this really sharp pain that just completely hurt like a son of a gun. And at the time, we thought that what had happened was I had torn a muscle in my back. That's all it was. So for about 2 to 3 weeks, we just treated this back pain as if it was a torn muscle. We would put icy hot on it, and that wouldn't work. We tried getting me a back massager that also had, you know, heaters put in it. That didn't work. And for 2 to 3 weeks, we were so sure it was just back pain, nothing more. But it was incredible back pain, and it would not go away. Eventually, it got so bad that we went to a chiropractor to see what was going on with my back. And this was about 2 to 3 weeks after it initially happened. So for 2 to 3 weeks, I'm living with this back pain. And this pain, I mean, was bad. Like, the pain was so awful. It felt like someone was taking a knife and sawing it down my back. It was excruciating. Now, I don't remember 100% how this all played out because I was so young. You know, it's kind of all a blur, not gonna lie. But if I remember correctly, I think the week that we started going to see a chiropractor about what was wrong with me, we went and we took a trip with my family to the beach. This was when crap got worse and it literally hit the fan for me. I don't remember when exactly it happened, but all I remember was one day I woke up and went into the kitchen and we were getting ready for a day at the beach. I was so happy and so excited, and I went to go get a drink. I think it was a glass of milk, and for some reason I couldn't grip my hand. Like, that was all I could do. We didn't know what was wrong or why I was doing it. Like, we really didn't know what was going on with me. But, you know, from that point on, it was like if I needed something, I had to use this hand because I couldn't grip with this one anymore. It was so weird, it was terrifying. And for the whole of that trip, you know, that was the main issue. I couldn't grip, and it was just sort of something that confused us, it baffled us. And then it got worse on the last day of our beach trip when we were all packing up to leave. I'll never forget it. I was in bed and I got out because, you know, it was time to get ready to go home and everything. And as soon as my feet hit the floor, this tingly sensation just engulfed both my legs. And the next thing I knew, I couldn't walk anymore. I literally looked like a drunkard trying to go to the fridge or the bathroom or wherever I walked. I could not walk straight, I stumbled. And all the while this is all happening, mind you, I still have this incredible back pain that will not leave me alone. I was so sleep deprived, I had bags under my eyes, and I just could not get any sleep. It was just getting bad. By that point, we left and we headed back home, and immediately we went to see the chiropractor. And at that time, what we decided to do is we wanted to get a x-ray of what's going on my back. We did the x-ray, you know, and they said, okay, well, we just need a massage this general area on your back. And the minute they did, I was just screaming in pain. I mean, the pain was agonizing. It was the worst thing I've ever felt. And the chiropractor laid off me and was like, okay, something's really not right here. He pulled my mom and dad aside and showed the x-ray, and in looking at the x-ray, he's like, look, I'm gonna be really honest here. There's 3 things in your son's x-ray that confuse me. There's a spot on his neck, his back, and right here in his lower hip that I can't identify what that is. This is beyond my profession, and you're probably gonna have to see like an actual doctor for this one. So from that point on, we visited every local hospital that we could possibly see to give an explanation of what's going on with me. Why can't I walk? Why can't I grip my hand anymore? What are these 3 spots on my back that a chiropractor can explain is going on with me? Why is my back in so much agony? And we just wanted answers. We went to about 3 to 4 hospitals, and none of them could tell us what was wrong with me. They just didn't know. By this point, it was near the end of June, so we've been dealing with this for a whole month. And our last resort was, and I'm gonna give a shout out to this hospital because they were amazing and they actually figured out what was wrong and they had the best treatment ever. It was Brenner's Children's Hospital of Winston-Salem. I won't forget this day. According to my dad, the last straw for him and what really took him to say, okay, we need to take this boy to Brenner's Children's Hospital. And I don't remember this, but he claims it happened. It eventually reached it to where I could no longer lift my arm anymore. Like, I don't know if I just got so much going on, I don't remember that. But he claimed up and down, I could no longer lift my arm anymore. Like, that's best I could get. And that was the last straw for him. And that's when they took me to Brenner's Children's Hospital in North Carolina. And I remember it was so awful getting there. I was in the back seat, stretched out. My back was killing me, but I was so exhausted. I slept right through it. I couldn't grip my hand. I was just having a rough time. I looked awful. I felt awful. We went inside the hospital and they, asked some questions, how you feeling, what's wrong, what's going on. And they just kind of kept us in this weird hospital waiting room kind of thing, where you're in bed, but you're not in a room, if that makes any sense. All of a sudden, all these doctors came swarming into my room and they put me on a little gurney and they pushed me to get an MRI. They didn't explain why, they rushed me out. So they gave me the MRI, I came out, and they said, all right, we're gonna do one more test. We need to give your son a biopsy. So we went in, and on, I don't remember what day it was, but I wanna say either the very, very, very end of June or the first day of July 1st, or maybe even today, I'm not too sure. The doctors gave me a biopsy. They had a cut up in my back, and I kid you not, the scar on my back literally looks like a thermometer. It is so crazy. And also, after my biopsy, I won't forget this. I remember waking up and I was lying in the bed, and I was so tired. The drugs that they pump you with to make you go to sleep when it's time for surgery or biopsy, the anesthesia, it was so strong on me whenever I woke up. I was just like, And I remember someone from church was at my bedside. They had a cup of ice and they were just feeding me ice because I was so thirsty. I remember being just so thirsty, and she just kept giving me a little bit of ice, a little bit of ice, a little bit of ice. And her daughter was there too, and she did something that I'll never forget. She gave me her stuffed animal. This is it. We actually took my hospital band where they gave me after the biopsy, and we wrapped it around it as a belt, so you can check that out. And I literally have it sitting on my dresser in my room, and I have it there and I look at it every day to serve as a reminder. But they cut me open and they saw the lump sitting on my back. They cut the lump out, and they had 7 cancer specialists all examine it. Once the MRI and the biopsy are both done, they pulled my mom and dad into a room on this day, and they said, ma'am, mister, we know what's wrong with your son. He has cancer. They said the cancer that I had was neuroblastoma, accordingly one of the worst cancers that a kid could have. The 3 lumps that the chiropractor saw in the x-ray were the 3 cancer lumps that were on me. One in my neck, back, and lower hip. The cancer was essentially operating by latching onto my back and snipping off various nerves, connected all throughout my body. Hence why I couldn't grip anymore, why I couldn't walk anymore, couldn't lift my arm anymore and everything. Because the cancer was just snipping off the nerves. But that wasn't the worst of it. The doctor said that unfortunately, we had caught the cancer late. And for that reason, they gave me, at the time, a 24% chance to live. Even worse yet, they said that they would give me till the end of the week to live. And what's worse, they said that if I did survive the treatment, even if I did come out of this thing alive, they said that the cancer had destroyed my back so much that I would never be able to walk again. I would be a paraplegic. The The cancer had just completely destroyed me, and it was just so bad that I didn't have much longer. So obviously the doctors didn't want to give up on me. So what they decided to do is they were going to dump every form of chemotherapy that they have in the hospital right on top of me. And don't quote me on this exactly, but I want to say my dad even said that the chemotherapy they dumped on me, and as much as they did, is enough to kill an adult. Like a grown adult would not likely survive it. They were just dumping it all right on top of me. The logic was, well, if the chemo doesn't kill him, the cancer will. He's dead anyway, so might as well just throw everything we got on top of him, see what happens. Now, I don't really know exactly how many chemotherapies I took, but I do know they categorized them in 3 groups: chemotherapy A, B, and C. Chemotherapy A was weird because it really just toyed with my senses. One minute I could see you clearly, next minute my eyesight is gone. One minute I could hear you, next minute I couldn't taste things the same anymore. It just really affected all my senses. Chemotherapy B, it really just did the typical chemotherapy stuff. You know, it made you sick, you vomited all the time, you were weak. But the thing that made this one unique is, unlike all the others, it made my mouth just swell up with just ulcers. It was incredible how many ulcers I had in my mouth. They were uncountable. And then chemotherapy C, I only did that one time because it was so bad. It literally just made me vomit anything and everything I had in my stomach. I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, I couldn't do anything. Anything that went in my stomach, I threw it up. It eventually got so bad where I was just literally throwing up stomach bile. No water, no food, just legit stomach bile, just coming up. And so we never did that one again. But yeah, they just threw it all on top of me and said, hope for the best. Now, I don't know if you believe in miracles, and whether you do or don't is another matter entirely, but for me personally, I do believe in miracles. About a week and a half or so, starting this chemotherapy and everything and being told that I won't last till the end of the week, my mom and dad called everyone that they had in their contacts and told them, please pray for our son, he doesn't have long. Please, I beg you, pray for our son, he does not have long. And so literally everyone that we knew just started praying for me all at once. Now after a while of doing that, the doctors in the hospital started acting really weird. They kept giving me MRIs like day in and day out, and just they wanted to keep testing me instead of focusing on getting me treated. Well, eventually my dad grabbed a hold of one of the doctors and was like, yo, like, why do you keep giving my son all these MRIs? And mind you, this was the head doctor. The doctor looked at my dad and said, well, sir, I'll be honest with you, we don't know what happened or how it happened, but your son's cancer has changed. What was once neuroblastoma has now changed into leukemia. They said that because it had changed, my chance of survival had increased in everything. Rather than having a 24% chance to live, they now were giving me a 75 to 100% chance to live. And just like that, the cancer became treatable. So after that, for about 6 to 7 months, we went through the chemotherapy like any other cancer patient. I had it on my birthday when I turned 11. I had it on the 4th of July, obviously. I had it on Thanksgiving. I had it on Halloween. And it was just a very long process. Mind you, most kids who have to go through cancer will sometimes have like years on, years out, like 2 to 3 years or so. And I guess for me, you can say I got lucky with only having to worry for it for about 6 to 7 months. But those were the longest 6 to 7 months I have ever had to endure. It was a constant back and forth with it. I'd go to the hospital and they would pump my body full of just chemotherapy, and I would lose my hair and I felt terrible. I felt crappy. I would go home, and when they took me back home, or allowed me to go back home actually, my body would be so weak because I had no immune system because the chemo completely destroyed my immune system, that I'd have to be rushed back up to the hospital because my body's trying to fight a disease and there's no way I'm going to survive it if we don't go to the hospital. And then after fighting off a disease in the hospital, they take me back home, let me stay there for a while. And then by that point, the chemo was starting to get out of my system. I'm starting to feel happier, healthier, better. And then I'd have to go right back up to the hospital for more treatment. I remember literally begging with tears, please, Mom, Dad, do not take me back to that hospital. Please don't, I beg you. It was horrible. I didn't want to go back. I just wanted a normal life. I just wanted to go back home and just go to school and just do everything like a normal kid. I didn't want to do this anymore. But you don't really have much of a choice when you're a cancer patient and you're kind of hanging on by a thread. So it was a very long process and it sucked. It was terrible. But I kept my optimism. I never lost my optimism. I always stayed strong no matter what happened when I was going through chemotherapy and everything. In fact, there's this one thing that frequently the doctors and everyone had to do when I was up there, which is called lumbar punctures, which, to get it loosely, I think there's like fluids in your hip your lumbar, like lumbar fluid, I don't know. And they needed to get samples of it out to see how I'm handling the chemo or something. I don't really know. But every single time I had to go down to get a lumbar puncture, they always had this milky white fluid that just put you on your butt. It was the weirdest, most powerful thing ever. And I remember every single time they had to pump me with this stuff to get me to go to bed so they could do the lumbar puncture, I had to flow with it. Something about this stuff would always make my head feel tingly, right? So every single time that it was time to get a lumbar puncture and they were putting me in the stuff, I'd always say, all right, y'all, good night. And everybody would always answer back with saying, good night. And it was just funny. We all had fun with it. And I'd sit there and I'd be like, all right, feeling warm, because it'd make you feel warm right around here. And after that, I'd be like, all right. And all of a sudden, start doing the little thing. They'd be like, tangly headed. And like, I would get knocked out. And I had it timed every single time. Like, I just had it memorized. I just was not going to let this cancer destroy my happy-go-lucky nature or anything. I was gonna have fun with it. And it was in that time that I guess you can say I really got a firm foundation in my relationship with God. Yes, I am a Christian. And yes, this cancer story really did it for me. I mean, when you're going through this time and you're a kid, what else can you do except cling to God? Even now, I cling to Him. I'm still a Christian. Like, I don't want it to seem like I left my religion behind me. I'm still very much so a Christian. Stuff like this, it leaves a mark on you. It's one of those things you have to experience to truly know what I'm talking about. And I'm really just being brief with this. There is a lot of stuff that happened during those months that I was going through cancer, but in its briefest form, that's really what happened. By the time November hit, I want to say, well, actually, no, it might even been December. Either the end of November or the beginning of December. We had finally conquered my cancer, and I was no longer a cancer patient. I was now a survivor. It was honestly an awesome moment in my life. But the battle wasn't over, unfortunately. In order for me to get my chemotherapy and my treatment and everything that I had to get done to get better, something that I had to do was get a portacath in my, chest right here. Now, portacaths are known to get infected. And for the whole time that I was going through cancer, it was operating, at peak. Nothing wrong with it. By the time I was cancer-free, the portacath gave out on me and it got an infection. And this infection was about as bad as the cancer itself. My whole body just erupted in like all these bumps and sores, which I still have scars from even today, where it was like, it felt like someone was just jabbing a knife into every part of my body. So for about a week and a half, I want to say, after being cancer free, they kept me in the hospital so I can get treatment to cure now this infection that was starting to take over my body because of the portacath. It was horrible, it was horrendous, but it didn't take long. Like I said, it literally took about 2 weeks, or at least a week and a half. From what I remember, I don't know. Now, something I do like to kind of laugh about though, with the whole thing with the infection of my portacath and everything, and me having to deal with that, there came a point where the pain was so immense that they needed to give me something more powerful than their typical painkillers that they had available. So their go-to option to take away the pain was morphine. The first hit I ever had of morphine in that hospital, I'll never forget that. I was just in my bed, curled up, just in pain and agony. I couldn't sleep. I was hurting all over, and I was like, give me some relief. The doctors were like, we're gonna give you morphine, all right? And I was like, okay. And they shot that stuff into my IV, and all I remember was feeling this warm spot just eroding all over my body, and I go, dude, and I passed the F out. And then I got hooked on it, not gonna lie. I kept asking for more. Like, morphine's addictive, so you best believe I was addicted to it. They probably did not give me any more after that. I don't really remember though. It's actually my favorite story of all the stories I got about me going through cancer. It's just funny to me. Finally, after some time, the infection went away, and once the infection was gone and over with, the hospital, they really didn't need to take care of me anymore. I was cancer free. It's time to go home, And I remember that ride home too. I remember walking out of my hospital room, and I just see all these nurses applauding me with this big banner that says, congratulations, Luke. And yeah, it was such an awesome time. It was truly amazing. Look, even the frogs over here are applauding me. I was cancer free just in time for Christmas. But even then, when I was at home, they had to put like a tube up my arm to help my antibodies to get better, and also to serve as an antibiotic itself. I think that's what it's called, because again, I had no immune system, so if something were to come up, you know, you need something to fight off the viruses and all for me, because, you know, it's winter. This is the time of the flu and cold. So aside from that, I mean, that's really it. That's my cancer story. Also, a little off note too, just because, you know, I think this is relevant also. About 3 months, maybe 5, half a year later, I don't know how long it was, we got a call from the hospital, and we were just ready to get back to normal living, you know? We were just recuperating from the cancer and the history and everything that just happened not even a year ago, and we're just trying to get back to normal living again. Well, we received this call from the hospital, and they were like, you know, hey, is this the residence of Luke's family? And we're like, yeah, this is us. And they're like, okay, your hospital just nominated you to be the Make-A-Wish kid of their hospital for this year, and we would love to ride down to your house someday, see your son, and ask him what he would like to wish for. And we're like, oh my gosh, Make-A-Wish is coming to... what? And it was just... it was so awesome. If you want to know more about my wish, you know, that's a story for another time. That's a whole thing with a lot of pictures in and of itself. And again, with like the whole cancer story, there's a lot that I guess you could say I missed. There's a lot of little details, there's a lot more I can say about it, but for the sake of video time and just to keep it brief and just get the general idea of what happened 11 years ago on this day, and from this point on until sometime in December, that's really my cancer story. I'm truly thankful to God to be alive. Life can be difficult sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, but at the end of the day, this day reminds me that I'm blessed to be alive and I'm thankful for it. So that's really all I got for you in this video, and I hope that you take this and apply it to your life in some way, and don't take life for granted, because yeah. Thanks for watching, and see y'all later. Stay safe.